Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. Today we're going to be going over parallel teaching, and my partners are...
My name is Amalia Gonzalez.
I'm Nicholas Escobedo.
I'm Chantel Picon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Garcia.
I'm Steven Xu.
And I'm Alexander Brown.
Okay, before we start with the lesson, we're going to have a quick ride. Please, think about your understanding about parallel. Think about some of the train tracks paths and how they are parallel to one another. Think about how you can connect the word parallel to teaching. So what do you already know about parallel teaching? You have 2 minutes for this quick ride. Okay, this is an introduction to the lesson. So I'm going to define co-teaching. Co-teaching is the practice of pairing teachers together in the classroom to share the responsibilities of planning, instructing, and assessing students. So we're going to focus now in parallel co-teaching. What is parallel co-teaching? Co-teachers instruct, monitor, or facilitate the work of different groups of students at the same time in the classroom. Parallel co-teachers may teach the same or different content. They may split the class evenly, or one teacher may work with the majority. We have this picture right here. So you can see both teachers, 2 teachers are teaching A, B, C students. So basically the class is divided in 2.
Okay, so where can parallel co-teaching take place? So you might wonder, it can take place in any subject for any discipline. So that's regarding to science, physical education, history, art, a foreign language, English, or a math classroom. Okay, so the benefits of parallel co-teaching are it can decrease the student to teacher ratio. It can establish closer relationships with the students in their smaller groups. Co-teachers have the opportunity to teach the exact or different content. They can split the class evenly among themselves, or even one person may work with the majority of students while the other works with a smaller group. There are lesser distractions and answering, and it can also minimize the amount of students or questions before moving on to the next lesson.
So some of the examples of parallel co-teaching structures include split class, where each co-teacher is responsible for a particular group of students, monitoring understanding of a lesson, providing guided instruction, or reteaching a group if necessary. Station teaching, also known as learning centers, where each co-teacher is responsible for assembling, guiding, and monitoring one or more learning centers or stations. Co-teachers rotate, where they rotate among 2 or more groups of students, with each co-teacher teaching a different component of the lesson. Similar to station teaching in learning centers, except that in this case, the teachers rotate between group within group, instead of groups of students rotating between station and station. Cooperative group monitoring, where each co-teacher takes responsibility for monitoring and providing feedback and assistance for a given number of cooperative groups of students. Experiment or lab monitoring, where each co-teacher monitors and assists a given number of laboratory groups, providing guided instruction to groups requiring additional support. Learning style focus, where one co-teacher works with a group of students using primarily visual strategies, and another co-teacher works with another group using primarily auditory strategies. Although they may work with a third group or together in some capacity to use kinesthetic strategies as a lesson requires it. And then finally, supplementary instruction. One co-teacher works with the rest of the class on a concept or assignment, skill, or learning strategy, and another co-teacher provides extra guidance on a concept, instructs students to apply generalized skills of the relevant environment, and provides a targeted group of students with guided practice in how to apply the learning strategy and the content that's being addressed. So here we have some examples of how parallel teacher might look at varying grade levels. For the first example, we have a middle school setting. The class is split in half. Both teachers are teaching the same content, but there might be a differentiation in materials. So one group of students might be working, say, on worksheets, while another one is doing a practical application. And they're working, the groups of students are working with 2 different teachers. Another example is at a high school setting, where their teacher might be paired with a special educator. You have one teacher having the large group of students, and the special educators teaching and assisting with a smaller group while the class is split. Both teachers are teaching different contents, right? The primary teacher is probably teaching something more aligned to, say, reading comprehension, while the special educator maybe is going over specifics in vocab or another topic entirely. And then there's individualized and differentiated direct instruction based on the groups of students and their needs.
So I'm going to talk about how important it is to work together and plan out your lessons when doing parallel teaching. First of all, it is important to build a good relationship with the other teacher. This means greeting the other teacher and getting to know them as a person. Make sure you say good morning and their name and smile sincerely and with enthusiasm. Remember that as a teacher, you are being judged on how you treat your peers. Your peers have the power to complain to the principal if you treat them with disrespect. You need to, secondly, you are not free to decide how you want to teach. You need to compromise with the other teacher. This can be time consuming. Even though you may disagree with the other teacher's teaching methods, you must respect their opinions. When you plan your lessons, you must make sure that your lesson and the other teacher's lesson are similar enough and that they end at the same time. Remind yourself that even if you disagree with the other teacher, you two are working toward the same goal.
So how does parallel teaching benefit the instruction when it is particularly challenging? So similar instructional groups, more time for students to fill in instructional gaps in a classroom management, which is easier. Also, it lowers the student-teacher ratio, which reduces the load of teaching in a larger class. And it allows for small group instruction, which can also be especially helpful for students who learn and think differently. In addition, it gives students a chance to ask more questions during the lesson time compared to being in a fuller classroom. More students are inside the classroom, and so having a small reduced classroom students allows the students to ask more questions to the instructor. Continuing on, a couple more benefits on parallel teaching that I want to touch on is by breaking the students into two groups, the teaching and the lessons simultaneously, more students can get the close small group instruction that research indicates helps struggling learners. More students have the opportunity, like I said, to ask questions throughout the process rather than a larger group. And it provides a chance for students to work in a heterogeneous groups made up of a variety of abilities instead of groups of students with similar strengths. And one more thing, it keeps the academic rigor of a demanding lesson, but splits the responsibility between both teachers.
Alrighty, so we've seen what parallel teaching is. We know where we see it in a classroom. We also know the benefits and how to use parallel teaching. But with that usually comes some cons. So we're going to go over a few cons. One of the cons that we start off with is it requires co-planning. Sometimes we're different teachers, we all teach differently, so it's kind of difficult to always be on the same page, but that's one of the requirements when it comes to parallel teaching. And then another one is both teachers need to be component with the content, so you guys would have to be on the same exact ground of knowing the same stuff at the same time, because you don't want to be in a classroom and teaching two sides of the classrooms completely differently, and then if the classmates were to talk, it would confuse them. And then another one is the pace of a lesson must be the same. So you don't want one teacher finishing 10 minutes early or 10 minutes late or even 5 minutes later early, because it would just give the other side of the classroom either time to distract or they'd be ahead, which you want the classroom to be in an equal setting. The next one is there must be enough flexible space in a classroom. And that one's pretty self-explanatory. And then the noise level must be controlled. So sometimes classrooms can get a little rowdy, and then when they're in smaller groups and they're with their friends, it definitely can get a little bit louder. It's definitely a benefit for the teachers to be in the same position, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. And then another one is making sure, which you've heard earlier, is to be friends with your co-teacher. But sometimes your first year or even your second year, if you're in a position of parallel teaching, it's not always going to be like that. You still are learning who that person is. So it's the best benefit to be friends with your co-teacher, but sometimes that can be difficult.
Now we're going to have you write at least 3 things you learned about parallel co-teaching from the presentation. So you'll have the link below, so you can click on that and write the 3 things down, and you have 2 minutes.
All right. So now we're going to have a watching of a video about parallel teaching in which you can observe the classroom distribution and how parallel co-teaching is effective in a science classroom setting.
Slide
At the bottom of
from
page
sliding back
45.
and forth.
Read that
The last thing
on
we
your
talked
own,
about was the
and
diaphragm.
then write
that dial
a
that turned
word,
the
1,
light
2, or 3,
so that it was more
and
intense.
often-
The parallel structure helps co-teachers make the best use of classroom resources.
So these are called objectives. Turn it to the low power objective.
Read the second paragraph, and then
Turn it to the medium
on your own and see what you come up with.
power objective, and then to the high power objective.
By dividing the class in half, the classroom teacher is able to give each student a microscope and intensify the value and immediacy of her instruction.
These knobs, what's it doing to your stage?
In this smaller group, the teacher is more easily able to check for understanding and provide individual help.
Yeah. In science, we often don't have enough equipment for 30 to 32 kids to have, let's say, a microscope. And so by having 2 groups, we can divide and have more people have their own microscope to work with, and another group can be learning about the things that go along with that particular topic.
We're going to take this and we're going to open it over the page, and we're going to slide it in like that. And by putting it in this way, it's going to stay in place really well. And then,
Students working with the specialist will read about the development of cell theory and take notes on report covers.
and I can write on my textbook without really writing on the textbook. After reading each paragraph, your task is to write a word or 2 or 3, no more than 3 words. So how many words can you write at the most? 3. You can do 1, 2, or 3. You're going to write a word in the margin of your textbook that summarizes what that paragraph was mostly about. So for me,
The parallel structure makes this hands-on type of note-taking manageable and productive.
who has one that they want to share that they came up with? Go ahead.
Animalcules equals bacteria.
Student accountability and involvement increase.
Equals bacteria. Did anybody have something about either bacteria or animalcules? Okay. Anybody have something really different? Really different.
Observing living cells.
Okay, it was about him observing living cells. Good. You had that too? Okay, go ahead and read the next paragraph.
Textbook work is so visual and auditory, and so many of our struggling students are tactile and kinesthetic learners. By putting the page covers over the pages, they now have the opportunity to write on them, which makes a more tactile interaction with the text.
Turn the eyepiece and it would move the pointer.
Let's make sure you're reading.
The smaller group sizes generated by the parallel structure help boost both the effectiveness and the practicality of using hands-on resources in classroom lessons.
You see, a 4.
Alrighty, so now we are gonna do, based on the previous instruction, videos, and reflections, complete a graphic organizer using the following instructions below. So we are gonna do a quick example with you guys on what that looks like. So as you can see right here, the instructions are pretty spot on. It's write a key term of parallel teaching, write reflections about what you've learned from the key term, and write applications based on how you would incorporate parallel teaching in the future. So far we have parallel teaching. So we're gonna put right here 2 teachers. Alrighty, because we know that there are 2 teachers in this setting. Alrighty, and then we're gonna go down to right here. So reflections, what do we know about them? That there is 2 teachers in the classroom. If we go back to what we learned that, what's it called? Reflections, let's go back to the directions real quick. Okay, what do we learn? That 2 teachers teach the same subject within the classroom. This one's a really simple one, guys, but there's definitely more key terms in the lesson that we just went through. And then application, where can I put this in? So from the video, we saw that they used it in a textbook setting. So the classroom was split in half and the application was utilizing note taking, and based on the textbook. And we saw that even though they spoke differently, both teachers were on point with the material and how it would look in a classroom. Righty, now we're gonna go back to the presentation and we're gonna give you guys 8 minutes to complete that section.
Okay, so overall, parallel co-teaching allows the two instructors to either teach the same or different content at the same time in the classroom. It allows for a more individualized instruction. It has many faces and can be used across all the disciplines, promotes collaboration between both teachers. It's very useful to address challenging content instruction. It involves organization and noise control from both teachers. Okay, so down at the bottom, you will find a link there, and that is the final assessment. So please complete the form and send it back through email. Make sure to use your CBP email address to ensure that you do get accredited for the assignment. We want to all thank you for your participation and your attention, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.